At Christmas, my mother-in-law introduced a new woman to my husband in front of everyone. I smiled sweetly. By the way, the house is in my name. The room went silent. I'm Jennifer Hayes, 34 years old, and until that Christmas dinner, I thought I had a solid marriage. My husband Derek and I had been together for 9 years, married for 7. We lived in a beautiful colonial home in Westchester County, drove nice cars, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. But that December 25th, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered in the most spectacular way possible. The betrayal didn't start that night, though. It had been building for months, maybe years, and I was too busy working and maintaining our lifestyle to notice the signs. My mother-in-law, Patricia Hayes, had never liked me. From the moment Derek brought me home to meet his family, she made it clear I wasn't good enough for her precious son. I was a dental hygienist when we met, not a doctor or lawyer like she'd hoped Derek would marry. The fact that I later built my own successful dental practice meant nothing to her. To Patricia, I would always be the girl who wasn't quite right for her baby boy. Derek and I met at a charity fundraiser 9 years ago. He was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in my career goals. He worked in sales for a pharmaceutical company, making decent money, but nothing extraordinary. When we got engaged after 2 years of dating, I was deeply in love and believed we were building something real together. Patricia's disapproval was a cloud over our happiness, but Derek assured me she'd come around eventually. She never did. The first few years of our marriage were good. We both worked hard, saved money, and talked about our future. I had dreams of opening my own dental practice, and Derek supported that goal, or so I thought. When my uncle passed away and left me a substantial inheritance of $200,000, Derek encouraged me to use it to open my practice rather than invest it jointly. At the time, I thought he was being supportive of my dreams. Looking back, I realized he was already planning his exit strategy. I opened Hayes Dental Care 4 years ago in a prime location in downtown Westchester. The practice grew quickly, and within 2 years, I was making 3 times what Derek earned. I hired 3 other hygienists and a receptionist. Business was booming. Around that same time, we found our dream house, a 4-bedroom colonial with a beautiful backyard in an upscale neighborhood. The asking price was $450,000. Derek suggested we put the house in my name alone for tax purposes. He said his accountant recommended it because my business income was higher and more stable than his sales commissions. It made sense at the time, or at least I convinced myself it did. I paid the down payment of $90,000 from my practice earnings, and the mortgage was set up through my business account. Derek contributed to the monthly bills, but the house was legally mine. He insisted on it, and I thought he was being practical. The cars told a similar story. My silver BMW was leased through my practice. Derek's black Audi was also in my name because, he claimed, he could get a better interest rate using my credit score. Everything we owned, from the furniture to the outdoor patio set, I had purchased. Derek's contributions were smaller, more sporadic. He'd pay for groceries some weeks, cover a dinner out, or buy himself new clothes. But the major expenses, the mortgage, the car payments, the insurance, all came from my accounts. I didn't mind at the time. I was making the money, and we were married. What's mine is yours, right? That's what I believed. Patricia, however, had a different perspective. She constantly reminded Derek that he was living off his wife's earnings, that he was less of a man because I made more money. During family gatherings, she'd make snide comments about how nice it must be for Derek to have a sugar mama, or she'd ask him loudly when he planned to start supporting his own household. Derek would laugh it off in front of her, but at home, he'd grow quiet and distant. Our intimacy suffered. He started working later hours, or so he claimed. He'd come home at 9 or 10 at night, saying he had client dinners or meetings that ran long. I was so busy managing the practice and trying to keep everything perfect at home that I didn't question it enough. When I did ask about his schedule, he'd get defensive, accusing me of not trusting him or being controlling because I made more money. The distance between us grew throughout the fall. By November, we were barely speaking beyond surface-level conversations about bills and schedules. He slept on his side of the bed, I slept on mine, with a canyon of silence between us. When I suggested marriage counseling, he dismissed it, saying we just needed to get through the busy holiday season and things would improve. I wanted to believe him. Patricia called me 3 weeks before Christmas. Her tone was sweeter than usual, which should have been my first warning sign. She said she wanted to host a big family Christmas dinner at her house, and that it was very important that both Derek and I attend. She emphasized that the whole family would be there, including Derek's sister Amanda, her husband, and their 2 kids, plus Derek's brother Michael and his girlfriend. Patricia said she wanted to make this Christmas special, a real family gathering. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Derek seemed unusually enthusiastic about his mother's invitation. He even offered to help her plan the menu and decorations, something he'd never done before. He was suddenly attentive to Patricia's phone calls, taking them in another room and speaking in low tones. When I asked what they were discussing, he'd say it was just holiday planning stuff, nothing important. The secrecy bothered me, but I pushed my concerns aside. Maybe he was planning a surprise gift for me. Maybe things were finally looking up. Christmas Day arrived cold and clear. I spent the morning at the practice, finishing up some year-end paperwork, while Derek said he needed to help his mother set up for the dinner. He left the house at 10 in the morning, promising to be back by noon so we could drive to his mother's together. Noon came and went. 1 o'clock passed. At 2, I called him. Hey babe, sorry. Mom needed more help than expected. Why don't you just drive over when you're ready? I'll meet you here. Something in his voice sounded off. Too cheerful, too rehearsed. But I got dressed in a nice red sweater and black slacks, wrapped the gifts I'd bought for everyone, and drove the 30 minutes to Patricia's large Tudor-style home in the suburbs. Cars lined the street outside, more than usual for a family gathering. I recognized Amanda's minivan and Michael's truck, but there were 3 other vehicles I didn't recognize. I knocked on the front door, balancing the stack of presents. Derek's sister Amanda answered, her face flushing red when she saw me. "Oh, Jennifer, hi. Come in." Her flustered greeting should have been my second warning sign. I stepped into the foyer, immediately struck by how quiet the house was despite all the cars outside. Usually, Patricia's Christmas gatherings were loud with conversation and laughter from the moment you walked in. Amanda took my coat with trembling hands and gestured toward the living room. "Everyone's in there." I walked into the living room with my arm full of presents and froze. The scene before me was like something out of a nightmare. Derek sat on the couch next to a woman I'd never seen before. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with long blonde hair and a figure-hugging green dress. Her hand rested on Derek's knee. Patricia stood beside them, beaming like a proud mother at a wedding. Michael and his girlfriend sat in armchairs, looking uncomfortable. Amanda's husband and kids were conspicuously absent. "Jennifer," Patricia exclaimed with false warmth, "so glad you could make it. I want you to meet someone very special." She gestured to the blonde woman. "This is Amanda Whitmore. She works with Derek at the pharmaceutical company. They've become quite close over the past several months." The presents slipped from my hands, tumbling onto Patricia's pristine white carpet. Amanda Whitmore smiled at me, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's nice to finally meet you, Jennifer. Derek has told me so much about you." Derek had the decency to look uncomfortable, but he didn't move his hand from where Amanda's rested on his knee. He didn't stand up. He didn't explain. He just sat there, letting this humiliation unfold in his mother's living room in front of his family. "What is this?" I asked, my voice somehow steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Patricia stepped forward, her expression a mixture of false sympathy and barely concealed satisfaction. "Jennifer, dear, we thought it was time for an honest conversation. Derek hasn't been happy for quite some time, and he's found someone who truly appreciates him, someone who doesn't make him feel like less of a man." The betrayal wasn't just Derek's. It was Patricia's orchestration of this public humiliation, using Christmas as the stage for my devastation. It was Michael and his girlfriend, sitting silently and allowing this to happen. It was Amanda, my sister-in-law, who had opened the door knowing what waited inside. "Derek?" I looked at my husband, needing to hear him say something, anything. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was worse than anger or guilt. It was indifference. "Jen, I'm sorry it happened this way, but Mom's right. We haven't been happy. You're always working, always focused on your practice. Amanda and I connected over the past few months, and I realized what I've been missing." "Connected," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "You've been having an affair." "Don't be dramatic," Patricia interjected. "Derek has simply found someone more suitable. Someone who understands that a man needs to feel like the provider, not like he's living off his wife's charity." Amanda Whitmore squeezed Derek's hand. "We didn't mean for it to happen, but sometimes love finds you when you least expect it." The room spun. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening, but it was. The evidence was right in front of me. My husband holding hands with another woman, his mother facilitating my public humiliation, his family watching like spectators at a particularly brutal sporting event. I don't know where the calmness came from. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was years of dealing with Patricia's cruelty finally building up an immunity. But instead of crying or screaming or begging, I felt something else entirely. Clarity. I bent down and picked up the fallen presents, setting them neatly on Patricia's coffee table. Then I looked around the room at each person in turn. Derek, looking guilty but not guilty enough. Amanda Whitmore, looking smug and victorious. Patricia, practically glowing with satisfaction. Michael and his girlfriend, cowards who wouldn't meet my eyes. "So this was planned," I said quietly. "The special family Christmas dinner. This was always meant to be the moment you introduced Derek's new girlfriend and kicked me to the curb." "It's not like that," Derek started, but Patricia cut him off. "It's exactly like that," she said triumphantly. "You were never right for this family, Jennifer. You came from nothing, and even with your little tooth-cleaning business, you'll always be beneath us. Derek deserves better. Amanda comes from a good family. Her father is a thoracic surgeon. She understands our social standing." "Your social standing," I repeated, looking at Patricia's smug face. "The social standing that comes from your late husband's middle management pension and the house he left you?" Patricia's smile faltered slightly. "How dare you?" "No, how dare you?" I said, my voice growing stronger. "How dare all of you orchestrate this humiliation on Christmas in front of family, like I'm some disposable thing you can just discard when a shinier model comes along." Amanda Whitmore laughed, actually laughed. "Derek told me you'd be difficult. You always make everything about you. Can't you see he's happier now?" I looked at Derek, really looked at him, the man I'd loved for 9 years, worked beside, built a life with, the man who was now holding another woman's hand in his mother's living room while she delivered the final blow to our marriage. "Is this what you want?" I asked him directly. "To end our marriage this way? No conversation, no counseling, just bringing your girlfriend to your mother's house and ambushing me?" He had the grace to look slightly ashamed. "I tried to tell you things weren't working, but you were always too busy with the practice. And yeah, this isn't how I wanted to do it, but Mom thought," I interrupted. "Of course, because you've never made a decision without consulting Mommy. Have you, Derek?" Patricia's face turned red. "You ungrateful little—" "I'm going to stop you right there," I said, holding up my hand. "Before you say something you'll regret. Actually, before any of you say anything else, there's something you should know." I pulled out my phone and opened my email app, pulling up a document I'd received from my lawyer just 2 weeks ago. I'd requested it for estate planning purposes, never imagining I'd need it for this. "Derek, do you remember when we bought the house? When you insisted we put it in my name alone for tax purposes?" He frowned, confused by the change in subject. "Yeah, so what? And the cars? Both in my name because of my credit score? What's your point, Jennifer?" Patricia snapped. I smiled then, a real smile. smiled because the pieces were finally falling into place in my mind. My point is this. Everything you see, everything Derek has been enjoying for the past 4 years is mine. Legally, financially, completely mine. The room went quiet. Amanda Whitmore's hand slipped from Derek's knee. The house we live in my name. Mortgage paid through my business account. The BMW Derek loves to drive, leased through my practice. The Audi he drives, in my name. Payments from my account. The furniture, the appliances, the outdoor grill he's so proud of, all purchased with my money, all belonging to me. Derek stood up, his face pale. That's not. We're married. Marital property is divided in divorce, yes, I agreed. But funny thing about New York state law, when one spouse owns property before the marriage or acquires it through inheritance, and it remains solely in that person's name, it's considered separate property. My inheritance, my practice, my house, my cars, all separate property that I acquired and maintained solely in my name. You're bluffing, Patricia said, but her voice wavered. Am I? I held up my phone, showing them the email from my lawyer, Rebecca Stern from Stern and Associates. I had my attorney drop a complete asset inventory 2 weeks ago for estate planning. Would you like me to read it out loud? Or should I skip to the part where it lists Derek's contributions to our marital assets? Silence. That's what I thought. Derek, in the 7 years we've been married, your name isn't on a single major asset. You don't own the house. You don't own the cars. You don't even own the furniture you sit on every day. What you own is your clothes, your Xbox, and about $4,000 in a checking account. Amanda Whitmore stood up abruptly. Derek, you told me. I know what I told you. He snapped at her, then turned to me. Jen, come on, don't do this. We can work something out. You don't have to be vindictive. Vindictive? I repeated, incredulous. You brought your mistress to your mother's house to humiliate me on Christmas, and I'm being vindictive for stating facts about property ownership? Patricia moved toward me, her face contorted with rage. You manipulative little witch. You planned this. You deliberately put everything in your name to trap my son. No, Patricia. Your son suggested it every single time. The house, the cars, everything. He said it made financial sense, and I believed him because I loved him and trusted him. But now I understand. He wanted his name off everything, so when his mother told him to trade up for a better wife, he could walk away clean. The truth of it hit Derek's face like a slap. That's not. I never. Didn't you? I looked at him sadly. How long have you and your mother been planning this? How many conversations did you have about how I wasn't good enough? About how you could do better? How long have you been with Amanda? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I turned to Amanda Whitmore, who looked significantly less confident than she had 5 minutes ago. Congratulations on your new boyfriend. I hope you enjoy dating a 36-year-old man who owns nothing, earns $60,000 a year in sales commissions, and is completely under his mother's control. I'm sure it'll be very fulfilling. We love each other, Amanda said weakly. Then you'll be very happy in whatever apartment he can afford on his salary, I replied. Then I looked at Derek one final time. You have until January 2nd to move your belongings out of my house. That gives you 1 week. Take your clothes, your gaming system, whatever personal items are yours. Leave the keys on the kitchen counter when you go. You can't just kick me out, Derek protested. I live there. No, Derek, you've been staying there as my guest. A guest who's no longer welcome. I pulled out my phone again and opened my text messages, showing him a message I'd sent to Rebecca Stern during his little speech about not being happy. I've already informed my attorney of the situation. She's filing separation papers first thing after the holidays. I suggest you get your own lawyer. Patricia grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my sweater. You ungrateful, cold-hearted, remove your hand, I said quietly, or I'll have you charged with assault. She let go as if burned. I gathered my purse and coat from the hall closet. As I walked toward the door, Amanda called out, "You're going to regret this. Derek is a catch, and you just threw him away." I paused at the door, looking back at the scene one last time. Derek, standing in the middle of his mother's living room, looking lost and confused. Patricia, red-faced and furious. Amanda Whitmore, realizing she'd just won a prize that came with nothing but debt and a meddling mother-in-law. Michael and his girlfriend, still frozen in their chairs like they were watching a car crash. No, I said calmly. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you all really were sooner. Merry Christmas. I walked out into the cold December evening, got into my BMW, and drove home to my house. My house, where I would start the new year as a single woman, but a single woman who owned everything she'd worked for and owed nothing to anyone. The room had gone silent when I revealed the property ownership, but that silence was nothing compared to the storm that was about to follow. The drive home from Patricia's house felt surreal. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my BMW, the car that was mine, paid for by my practice, titled in my name alone. The streets were decorated with Christmas lights, families visible through windows gathered around trees and dinner tables, celebrating the holiday in warmth and love. Everything I thought I had just hours ago. I pulled into the driveway of the colonial house, my house, and sat in the car for a long moment. The porch light was on, the timer I'd set that morning, ensuring the house looked welcoming when we returned from what I thought would be a normal family dinner. The wreath I'd hung on the door last week still displayed its cheerful red bow. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it, but nothing would ever be the same. Inside, the silence was deafening. The Christmas tree Derek and I had decorated 2 weeks ago stood in the living room, lights twinkling, presents underneath that would never be opened. I'd spent 3 hours picking out the perfect gift for him, a vintage watch he'd admired at an antique store. He'd gotten me nothing, I realized now. There was no gift under the tree with my name on it. He'd known he wouldn't be here for Christmas morning. I sat on the couch, the expensive leather couch I'd purchased from a furniture store in Manhattan, and finally let myself process what had happened. My husband of 7 years had been having an affair with a coworker. His mother had orchestrated a public humiliation designed to break me. His entire family had participated in the ambush, sitting there like spectators at my execution. But I hadn't broken. I'd stood there and stated facts, cold, hard facts about property and ownership, and watched their triumph turn to confusion and then to panic. The look on Derek's face when he realized he owned nothing, absolutely nothing, was something I'd carry with me forever. My phone started buzzing before I'd even taken off my coat. Derek's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. A text message appeared. Jen, please, we need to talk about this. Don't make any rash decisions. Rash decisions. The man who'd brought his mistress to his mother's house to dump me was warning me against rash decisions. I almost laughed, but the sound that came out was closer to a sob. More texts flooded in. Derek begging me to reconsider. Patricia calling me every vile name she could think of. Michael sending a weak message saying he was sorry it happened like that, but maybe it was for the best. Nothing from Amanda, Derek's sister, which told me everything I needed to know about her cowardice. The only message I responded to was one that came in at 9 o'clock that evening from a number I didn't recognize. Jennifer, this is Amanda Whitmore. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Derek told me you two were already separated and just waiting to finalize things. I never would have gotten involved if I'd known you were still together. Can we talk? I stared at that message for a full minute before typing my response. Derek lied to you, just like he lied to me. We were very much married up until today, but that's between you and him now. Don't contact me again. She tried calling twice. I blocked her number. At 11 that night, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Derek's Audi. My Audi, technically. He got out and approached the front door, but I'd already engaged the deadbolt and chain lock. He knocked softly at first, then louder. Jen, please let me in. We need to talk. I live here. Not anymore. I called through the door. I told you have until January 2nd to get your things. It's not January 2nd yet. This is insane. You can't lock me out of my own house. It's not your house, Derek. It's my house. Check the deed if you don't believe me. I have nowhere to go. You have several options, I said calmly, though my heart was pounding. Your mother's house, your mistress's apartment, or a hotel. Choose one. Jennifer, please. His voice cracked, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Can we please just talk like adults? I know I messed up. I know I handled this wrong, but we can work through this. Work through what exactly? The affair? The public humiliation? Or the part where you and your mother plotted to replace me like I was a broken appliance? Silence from the other side of the door. That's what I thought, I said. Go away, Derek. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on. My clothes are in there. My stuff. And you'll get your stuff on January 2nd, as I said. Until then, I'm sure Amanda Whitmore has a washing machine you can use. He pounded on the door once, hard enough to rattle the frame. Then I heard his footsteps retreating. The Audi's engine started and he drove away. I slid down against the door and finally let myself cry. The tears came in waves, great heaving sobs that shook my entire body. 7 years of marriage, 9 years of relationship, gone in one cruel Christmas dinner. The man I'd loved, worked beside, dreamed with, had looked at me with indifference while holding another woman's hand. His mother had smiled while delivering the killing blow, and I'd been too stupid, too trusting, too focused on building a successful practice to see any of it coming. But even through the tears, even through the pain, there was something else. A small, hard kernel of satisfaction that I'd seen their faces when I revealed the property situation, that I'd walked out of that house with my dignity intact, that Derek was the one scrambling for a place to sleep tonight, not me. I must have fallen asleep on the floor because I woke at 6 in the morning on December 26th with a stiff neck and my phone buzzing insistently. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, 3 voicemails. I ignored all of them except one email from Rebecca Stern, my attorney, that had come in at midnight. Jennifer, got your message. I'm so sorry this happened, especially on Christmas. I'll be in the office tomorrow morning at 9. Can you come in so we can discuss your options? Bring any documentation you have regarding property ownership, bank accounts, and Derek's contributions to the household. We'll need to move quickly on the separation papers. Best, Rebecca. I responded immediately. I'll be there at 9. Thank you for responding so quickly. The rest of the day passed in a blur of practical matters. I changed all the passwords on our joint accounts, not to drain them, but to prevent Derek from doing so. I documented every asset in the house, taking photos of furniture, appliances, electronics, everything I'd purchased. I gathered receipts from my filing cabinet, years of proof showing my purchases, my payments, my money funding our lifestyle. I also called a locksmith and scheduled him to come change all the locks on December 27th. The house was mine, but I wanted to ensure Derek couldn't access it even if he'd made copies of keys I didn't know about. That evening, sitting at my kitchen table with files spread around me, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Jennifer Hayes, a woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes, this is Diane Brennan from Brennan Family Law. I've been retained by Derek Hayes regarding a divorce matter. I'm calling to see if we can resolve this situation amicably without lengthy court proceedings. So Derek had already hired a lawyer. That was fast. I have legal representation, I said. Rebecca Stern from Stern and Associates. Any communication should go through her. Of course, Diane said smoothly. But woman to woman, Jennifer? I think we can both agree that dragging this through court benefits no one. Derek is willing to be reasonable about the property division if you'll consider mediation. Reasonable, I repeated. Your client brought his mistress to his mother's house to dump me on Christmas Day, and now he wants to be reasonable about dividing property he doesn't own? A pause. I understand emotions are running high. My emotions are fine, I interrupted. What I own is clearly documented. What Derek owns is minimal. There's nothing to mediate. He can have his personal belongings. Everything else is mine. Your client can contest that in court if he'd like, but I have 7 years of receipts, bank statements, and property property deeds that say otherwise. Mrs. Hayes, it's Ms. Hayes now. Or better yet, Dr. Hayes, since I actually earned that title. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anger. From the audacity of Derek hiring a lawyer to try to claim property he deliberately kept his name off of. From the nerve of him thinking I'd just roll over and give him half of everything I'd worked for while he'd been planning his exit with another woman. The next morning, I sat across from Rebecca Stern in her downtown office. Rebecca was 52, with sharp eyes and a reputation for being ruthless in divorce cases. I'd used her firm for some business contracts, and when I'd needed an estate planning consultation 2 weeks ago, she'd been the obvious choice. Show me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I spread out the documents. The house deed, solely in my name. The mortgage papers, showing my practice as the funding source. The car leases, both in my name. Bank statements showing deposits from my practice and Derek's sporadic contributions that amounted to maybe 20% of our monthly expenses. Receipts for furniture, appliances, even the lawnmower. 7 years of financial documentation proving one simple fact. I'd paid for everything. Rebecca reviewed it all methodically, making notes, occasionally asking questions. Finally, she looked up at me. This is the most clear-cut, separate property case I've seen in 20 years, she said. Your husband doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. Everything here is yours, acquired through inheritance or your separate business, maintained solely in your name, with clear documentation of your exclusive payments. But we're married, I said. Doesn't that count for something in asset division? In New York, marital property is divided equitably, not necessarily equally. But this isn't marital property. You inherited money before the marriage, used it to start a business that remained yours, and then purchased assets with that business income. Derek's name isn't on anything, and these bank statements show his contributions were minimal. She tapped the papers. He might try to argue he's entitled to some portion based on the marriage, but honestly, Jennifer, he'd lose. And based on what you've told me about the circumstances of your separation, I don't think he wants to fight this in open court. Why not? Because fault still matters in New York, especially regarding adultery. If this goes to court, his affair becomes public record. His affair that his mother facilitated by hosting the meeting with his mistress. That doesn't play well in front of a judge, especially when you're also asking for spousal support. I hadn't even thought about spousal support. Could I get that? You could ask for it, absolutely. You're the higher earner, but given that he committed adultery and that his contributions to the household were minimal, a judge might very well order him to pay you something, if only as a punitive measure. It wouldn't be much, but it would be satisfying. Satisfying. Yes, it would be. But something about the idea of taking money from Derek felt wrong, like staying connected to him. I don't want his money, I said. I want a clean break. I want him out of my house, out of my life, and I want to move forward. Rebecca nodded approvingly. Then here's what we do. We file for legal separation immediately, citing adultery. We document every asset and show clear proof of your separate ownership. We give him exactly what you said, his personal belongings and nothing more. If he contests, we threaten to pursue spousal support and publicly document his affair in court filings. My guess, he'll take the deal. What about his lawyer? She called me yesterday trying to set up mediation. Diane Brennan, Rebecca said with a slight smile. I know her. She's good, but she's also practical. Once she sees this documentation, she'll advise Derek to settle. Fighting this would cost him more in legal fees than he could possibly win. We spent the next 2 hours drafting separation papers and preparing a formal property inventory. Rebecca's paralegal took copies of all my documentation. By the time I left her office at noon, I felt something I hadn't felt since Christmas dinner. In control. I stopped at a coffee shop on the way home, needing caffeine and a moment to process everything. While I sat at a corner table, my phone rang. My dental practice manager, Sharon, calling on her day off. Dr. Hayes, I'm so sorry to bother you during the holidays, but something's happened. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Derek came by the office this morning. He told Melissa at the front desk that he needed to pick up some personal items you'd left for him. Melissa didn't know what was going on with you two, so she let him into your private office. He what? I stood up, spilling coffee on the table. Is he still there? No, he left about 20 minutes ago. But Dr. Hayes, he took some files from your desk. I saw him leaving with a folder. I tried to stop him, but he said you'd told him he could take them. I told him no such thing. Sharon, which files? I don't know exactly, but I think it was from your locked drawer, the one where you keep personal documents. My blood ran cold. In that drawer, I kept backup copies of important paperwork, property deeds, car titles, bank account information, things I hadn't needed at Rebecca's office because I had the originals at home, things Derek shouldn't have access to. How did he get into the locked drawer? He had a key, a small silver one. He said you'd given it to him. I'd given Derek that key years ago when I first opened the practice, back when I'd trusted him completely, back when I'd thought we were building a life together. I'd forgotten it existed. Sharon, I need you to go back to the office right now and check exactly what's missing. Document everything. Take photos if you need to, and call our security company to get footage from this morning. Derek entered that office without permission, and he took private property. Dr. Hayes, are you and Derek? We're separating, and this is exactly why. Please, Sharon, go now. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. I called Rebecca Stern from my car, filling her in as I drove. Her response was immediate and furious. That's burglary. He broke into a private business and stole documents. Get me a list of what he took, and I'll have him charged. Will that hurt the divorce proceedings? Jennifer, at this point, I don't care. He crossed a line. You don't break into someone's business and steal their property, estranged spouse or not. This was calculated and malicious. When I arrived at my practice, Sharon was in my office with a checklist. He took copies of the house deed, both car titles, and what looks like your business incorporation documents. He also took a file of bank statements from from last year. Why would he want those? I asked, though I was starting to understand. Sharon hesitated. Dr. Hayes, I think he's looking for ammunition. Maybe trying to prove he contributed more than he actually did, or looking for some technicality that gives him claim to your assets. She was right. Derek had panicked when he realized he owned nothing, and now he was scrambling for any leverage he could find. But he'd made a critical mistake. Everything he'd stolen were copies, and I had the originals safely documented with my attorney. I called Rebecca back. He took copies of property documents and bank statements. Nothing original, nothing he can actually use to claim ownership, but I want him charged anyway. Consider it done. I'll file a police report this afternoon for burglary and theft. This establishes a pattern of behavior that will only help your case. The man is self-destructing, Jennifer. Let him. That evening, 2 police officers came to my house to take my statement about the break-in at my practice. They were professional and sympathetic, especially when I explained the context of the separation. One of them, Officer Martinez, had been a patient at my practice. Dr. Hayes, I'm sorry you're going through this, she said as she finished her notes. For what it's worth, my sister went through something similar. Her ex tried to claim half of her salon business even though he'd never worked a day there. The judge laughed him out of court. I hope my case goes as smoothly. With this documentation, it will. She handed me a case number. If he tries to contact you or enters your property again, call us immediately. This police report establishes that he's already demonstrated willingness to break the law. That matters. After they left, I sat in my living room, in my house, surrounded by my things, and felt the weight of the past 2 days finally settle on my shoulders. Derek had betrayed me. His family had humiliated me, and now he was trying to steal from me, trying to find some way to claim what I'd built. But he'd failed. At every turn, he'd failed, and I was still standing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. Derek deserves half of everything you have. You owe him that much for standing by you all these years. Patricia. It had to be. I blocked the number without responding. Another text, different number. My brother made a mistake, but you're being cruel. He needs a place to live. He's family. Amanda, Derek's sister, finding her spine now that it was convenient. Blocked. Then Derek himself, from yet another unknown number. I'm staying at a motel. A motel, Jen. On the day after Christmas. Is this really what you want? To destroy me completely? I stared at that message for a long time before typing my response. You destroyed yourself when you chose to betray our marriage. The consequences are yours to live with. Don't contact me again. Blocked. But the messages kept coming, from number after number. Patricia calling me every variation of heartless and cruel. Michael suggesting I was overreacting. Even Amanda Whitmore sent a message. You're being vindictive. Derek told me you'd be like this. Maybe he was right to leave you. I blocked them all and finally turned off my phone completely. In the silence of my house, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion and poured myself a generous glass. This wasn't the special occasion I'd imagined, but it seemed appropriate nonetheless. A toast to the end of my marriage, to the beginning of whatever came next, and to the satisfaction of knowing that Derek was learning a very expensive lesson about the difference between living in someone's house and owning your own life. Tomorrow, I'd change the locks. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of removing every trace of Derek from my home. Tomorrow, I'd begin building the life I should have been living all along. But tonight, I'd simply sit in my beautiful house that I'd worked for, earned, and paid for completely on my own, and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back since that moment in Patricia's living room when my world shattered. The anger, the grief, the betrayal, and yes, beneath it all, the dark satisfaction of knowing that Derek had played himself. He'd insisted on keeping his name off everything to avoid looking like he was living off his wife, and now he owned nothing at all. Revenge wasn't my goal. Justice was. And justice, it seemed, had sharp teeth. The locksmith arrived at 8 o'clock on the morning of December 27th. His name was Carl, a gray-haired man in his 60s who'd been changing locks in Westchester County for 40 years. He took one look at my face, puffy from crying and lack of sleep, and asked no questions beyond which locks needed changing. All of them, I said. Front door, back door, garage, even the door from the garage into the house, everything. Carl nodded and got to work. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the sound of drills and the click of new locks being installed. Each sound felt like another layer of protection, another barrier between me and the chaos Derek had created. My phone, which I'd turned back on that morning, immediately flooded with messages, but these were different. My receptionist, Melissa, had apparently told someone at the practice what happened, and word had spread. Messages of support poured in from colleagues, patients, even the woman who owned the coffee shop next to my practice. Dr. Hayes, I heard about your separation. I'm so sorry. If you need anything, I'm here. That was from Karen, one of my dental hygienists. Jennifer Bryan and I were shocked to hear the news. Please know you have our full support. From the Johnsons, patients who'd been with my practice since I opened, but not all the messages were supportive. Patricia had apparently begun her own campaign, calling relatives and family friends to share her version of events. By mid-morning, I received a call from Derek's Aunt Susan, a woman I'd always gotten along with. Jennifer, Patricia called me last night. She says you've kicked Derek out of his own home and are trying to take everything from him. She says you changed the locks and won't let him get his belongings. Is that true? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Susan, Derek brought another woman to Patricia's house on Christmas Day to end our marriage in front of his family. The house is in my name, paid for entirely by me, and I've given him until January 2nd to collect his personal belongings. I haven't kept anything from him that's actually his. Silence on the other end. Then, he brought another woman to Patricia's house? Yes. Her name is Amanda Whitmore. They work together. According to Derek, they've been connecting for several months. And Patricia knew about this. Patricia orchestrated it. She invited me to what she said was a family Christmas dinner, but it was actually an ambush. She introduced Derek's girlfriend to me like she was presenting a replacement bride. More silence. Then Susan's voice, sharp with anger. That woman. I should have known. Jennifer, I'm so sorry. Patricia's been saying you're being vindictive and cruel. That poor Derek has nowhere to go. She didn't mention any of this other woman business. Of course she didn't. What can I do? How can I help? The question surprised me. Honestly, Susan, just knowing you believe me is enough. I do believe you. I've known you for 9 years, and I've known Patricia for 40. You've always been kind and hardworking. Patricia's always been manipulative and controlling. I should have warned you about her when Derek first brought you around. She paused. Jennifer, I'm going to make some calls. Other family members need to know the truth. After we hung up, I felt slightly better. At least one person in Derek's family saw through Patricia's lies. But I knew it wouldn't be enough to stop the campaign Patricia was waging. She'd spent years building her social circle, her reputation. She wouldn't let her son's failed marriage, especially one where he was clearly at fault, damage that reputation. Carl finished with the locks around noon, handing me a set of shiny new keys. All secure, Dr. Hayes. Nobody's getting in here without your permission now. Thank you, Carl. He hesitated at the door. My daughter went through a divorce 3 years ago. Messy one. Her ex tried to claim half her bakery even though he'd never set foot in the kitchen. Judge saw right through it. He smiled kindly. Just wanted you to know, it gets better. Takes time, but it gets better. After he left, I walked through my house, testing each new lock. The solid click of the deadbolt engaging felt like reclaiming territory. This was my space now. Mine alone. Derek couldn't walk in unannounced anymore. Couldn't show up drunk at midnight demanding to talk. Couldn't bring Amanda Whitmore here to show off what he'd convinced himself was his home. That afternoon, Rebecca Stern called with an update. Derek's attorney reached out. They want to negotiate. That was fast. I sent her the property documentation and copies of the police report from the break-in at your practice. Diane Brennan is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. She knows Derek has no case, and now he's facing potential criminal charges for burglary. What are they offering? Exactly what you proposed. Derek gets his personal belongings, you keep everything else, and he walks away. No spousal support, no property division, clean break. They're asking if you'll drop the criminal charges in exchange. I thought about it. Having Derek arrested would be satisfying, but it would also prolong our connection. Every court date, every hearing would mean seeing him, dealing with him. What do you recommend? Personally, I'd love to nail him to the wall. Professionally, taking the deal gets you free faster. He goes away. You keep everything you worked for, and you can move on with your life. Then let's take it. I want him gone. I'll draft the papers. We can have this finalized by mid-January if he doesn't drag his feet. After hanging up, I felt a weight lift from my chest. It was really happening. In a matter of weeks, I'd be officially separated, on my way to divorce, and Derek would be completely out of my life. The marriage that had taken 9 years to build would be dismantled in less than a month. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang at 7, and when I checked the security camera I'd had installed that afternoon along with the new locks, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-50s, well-dressed, carrying what looked like a casserole dish. Can I help you? I asked through the intercom. Dr. Hayes, I'm Barbara Whitmore, Amanda's mother. May I speak with you for a moment? Amanda Whitmore's mother. My husband's mistress's mother was standing on my doorstep. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave, but curiosity won out. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. Barbara Whitmore looked uncomfortable, clutching her casserole dish like a shield. I'm so sorry to intrude. I know this is awkward, but I felt I needed to speak with you. Why? Because my daughter told me what happened, and I'm horrified. She held out the casserole dish. I know this is a terrible gesture given the circumstances, but I didn't know what else to do. I'm so sorry for what Amanda did, for her part in hurting you. I took the dish automatically, too surprised to refuse. Your daughter is having an affair with my husband. I know, and I'm ashamed of her. Barbara's eyes filled with tears. Amanda told me she met a wonderful man at work who was separated from his wife. She said they'd been apart for over a year, just waiting to finalize the paperwork. She brought him to Thanksgiving dinner, and he seemed lovely, charming, attentive. He told us all about his difficult marriage, how his wife worked all the time, and they'd grown apart. None of that was true. I know that now. This morning, I called Patricia Hayes because I wanted to thank her for being so welcoming to Amanda at the Christmas dinner. She mentioned you storming out, causing a scene, being vindictive. Barbara shook her head. Something about her story didn't sit right, so I did some research. I found your dental practice website, which mentions your husband in the About Us section, thanking him for his support. That section was updated in November. I'd forgotten about that page. I'd added a personal note thanking Derek for his support as I expanded the practice, back when I'd still believed our marriage was solid. Then I found your practice's Facebook page, Barbara continued. You posted a photo on December 15th of you and Derek at the practice holiday party. The caption said, celebrating another successful year with my amazing husband. That's not what someone writes about an ex they've been separated from for a year. No, it's not. So I confronted Amanda, really confronted her, and eventually she admitted that Derek might have exaggerated the separation timeline. She said she thought you were separated, just not officially. She swears she didn't know you were still living together, still married in any real sense. We were very much married until he brought her to his mother's house on Christmas Day to dump me. Barbara closed her eyes, pain evident on her face. I'm so deeply sorry. I raised Amanda to be better than this. Her father and I have been married for 32 years. We taught her to respect relationships, to have integrity. I don't know where we went wrong, but I'm ashamed of what she's done. Her genuine distress was unexpected. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know that not everyone in this situation is against you, and because I wanted you to know that Amanda is paying a price for her choices. I told her tonight that she's no no longer welcome in our home until she ends things with Derek and makes a genuine effort to make amends. I can't force her to do the right thing, but I can refuse to support her doing the wrong thing. You're cutting off your daughter? I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference. Amanda is 28 years old enough to understand consequences. If she chooses to continue a relationship that began with deception and betrayal, that's her choice, but she'll make it without my blessing or support. I didn't know what to say. The idea of a mother holding her adult daughter accountable, actually imposing consequences, was so foreign to my experience with Patricia that I could barely process it. Barbara pulled out a business card. If you need anything, or if there's any way I can help with your legal proceedings, please don't hesitate to call. Amanda might have made terrible choices, but I don't have to enable them. You were wronged here, Dr. Hayes. Profoundly wronged. After she left, I stood in my foyer holding a casserole dish from my husband's mistress's mother, trying to make sense of the interaction. Barbara Whitmore had more integrity in her pinky finger than Patricia Hayes had in her entire body. She'd raised a daughter who made awful choices, but at least she held that daughter accountable. I put the casserole in the refrigerator, not sure if I'd ever eat it, but unwilling to throw away what was clearly a genuine gesture of apology. Then I poured another glass of wine and settled onto my couch to face the reality of what came next. The separation papers would be filed. Derek would have to find a place to live on his $60,000 salary. He'd have to explain to friends and colleagues why his marriage ended, why he was starting over at 36 with nothing to his name. Amanda Whitmore would discover what it meant to date a man whose mother controlled his every decision and who owned nothing but his clothes and an Xbox. And I would have to rebuild my life. Figure out who Jennifer Hayes was without Derek. Learn to sleep alone in a king-sized bed. Navigate social situations where people would inevitably ask about my husband. Face the pity and the curiosity and the speculation. But I'd also have something I hadn't had in years. Freedom. Freedom from Patricia's judgment. Freedom from Derek's passive-aggressive comments about my work schedule. Freedom from the constant, exhausting effort of trying to be enough for people who would never think I was enough no matter what I did. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan, Derek's aunt. Just got off the phone with 3 other family members. Everyone's appalled by what Patricia did. You have more support than you know. Then another, from Karen at the practice. Dr. Hayes, the staff wants you to know we're Team Jennifer all the way. Also, we're planning a girls' night out for New Year's Eve if you're interested. You shouldn't be alone. And one more, from Rebecca Stern. Derek signed the preliminary separation agreement. His attorney sent it over an hour ago. He's accepting your terms. The nightmare is almost over. I read that last message 3 times, letting it sink in. Derek was giving up. He'd realized he had no leverage, no case, no way to claim what wasn't his. In less than 3 days, he'd gone from thinking he could replace me and keep his comfortable lifestyle to understanding he was walking away with almost nothing. The satisfaction I felt wasn't pretty or noble. It was dark and fierce and absolutely justified. Derek had thought he could have it all. A devoted wife who paid for everything and an exciting new girlfriend waiting in the wings. He'd thought he could humiliate me publicly and then negotiate for half of what I built. He'd been wrong on every count. I raised my wine glass to the empty room. To new beginnings, I said aloud, and to the very satisfying end of old mistakes. My phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Jennifer? A male voice, uncertain. It's Michael, Derek's brother. What do you want, Michael? I wanted to apologize for Christmas, for sitting there and not saying anything while Mom ambushed you. That was cowardly, and I'm sorry. Yes, it was. Derek's staying with me right now. He's a mess. He keeps saying this isn't how it was supposed to go, that Mom promised him everything would work out. Your mother promised him what, exactly? Michael hesitated. She told him that once he introduced Amanda, you'd see you couldn't compete with a younger woman from a better family. She said you'd cave, let him have whatever he wanted in the divorce just to avoid the embarrassment. She said you'd be desperate to settle quickly and quietly. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Patricia really doesn't know me at all, does she? No, she doesn't. None of us do, apparently. Jennifer, I'm calling because Derek needs to get his stuff from the house. I know you said January 2nd, but he's got nowhere to put things. No real plan. Could he maybe come by sooner? With me there? To keep things civil? Fine. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. He gets 2 hours to pack his personal belongings. Nothing else. You can be there to supervise. But Michael, if he tries to take anything that's not his clothes or personal items, I'll call the police. Understand? I understand. Thank you, Jennifer. And for what it's worth, I think Derek's an idiot for what he did. You deserved better. Yes, I agreed. I did. After hanging up, I set an alarm for 9 o'clock the next morning. I wanted to be awake, dressed, and ready when Derek arrived to collect his things. I wanted him to see me strong, unbroken, standing in my house that he'd never actually owned. The wine was making me philosophical. 7 years of marriage, and what did Derek have to show for it? Some clothes, an Xbox, a girlfriend who thought she'd won a prize only to discover she'd won a broke man with massive family drama and mother issues. Meanwhile, I had a house, a thriving practice, financial security, and my dignity. The scales of justice, I thought, didn't always balance the way people expected. Sometimes the person who looked like they had everything lost it all. And sometimes the person who was supposed to be devastated walked away with exactly what they'd earned. I fell asleep on the couch that night, wine glass empty on the table beside me, dreaming of locks that couldn't be picked and houses where I lived alone but never felt lonely. The next morning, I woke at 8:30, showered and dressed carefully. Not in casual clothes that suggested I'd been lounging around nursing my wounds, but in fitted black slacks and a crisp white blouse, the kind of outfit I wore to important meetings at the practice. I wanted Derek to see exactly what he was losing, a successful, put-together woman who didn't need him. I made coffee and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, a pickup truck pulled into my driveway. Michael's truck with Derek in the passenger seat. They sat there for a moment, Derek clearly steeling himself, before both men climbed out and approached the front door. I opened it before they could knock, standing in the doorway with my arms crossed. Derek looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled, and he'd clearly been sleeping poorly. Good. Jennifer, he started, but I held up my hand. 2 hours. Personal belongings only. Clothes, toiletries, your gaming system, whatever personal items are genuinely yours. Nothing else. Michael is here to witness what you take. I'll be in the kitchen with my laptop, documenting everything. If you try to take something that's not yours, I'll call the police. Clear? Crystal, Derek muttered, not meeting my eyes. Michael nodded apologetically at me and they entered. I'd already set up my laptop on the kitchen table with a clear view of the living room and hallway. I could hear them moving upstairs to the master bedroom, the bedroom Derek would never sleep in again. The sound of drawers opening and closing drifted down, footsteps back and forth, the occasional murmured conversation between the brothers that I couldn't quite make out. I focused on my laptop, answering emails from the practice, refusing to let Derek's presence in my house disturb my work. After about 45 minutes, Derek came downstairs carrying a large suitcase. He stopped when he saw me in the kitchen, his face a mixture of sadness and resentment. I can't believe you're really doing this, he said, throwing away 7 years like it meant nothing. I looked up from my laptop, keeping my voice level. I'm not the one who threw it away, Derek. You did that when you chose to cheat. You did that when you brought Amanda Whitmore to your mother's house to humiliate me. I tried to talk to you so many times, he insisted, setting the suitcase down. You were always working, always too busy for us. What was I supposed to do? Not cheat. That would have been a good start. Talk to me about your feelings like an adult. Suggest counseling. Literally anything except what you actually did. You don't understand what it was like, Derek said, his voice rising. Living here, in your house, driving your cars, having mom constantly remind me that I was living off my wife. Do you know how that feels? How emasculating that is? Then you should have worked harder, earned more, built something of your own instead of resenting me for what I built. I tried, but you were always so perfect, so successful. How was I supposed to compete with that? You weren't supposed to compete, Derek. You were supposed to be my partner. Michael appeared at the top of the stairs, clearly uncomfortable. Derek, come on, let's just get your stuff and go. But Derek wasn't done. He stepped closer to the kitchen, his face flushed. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? With your fancy practice and your perfect credit score and your name on everything, you think you won. I don't think I won anything, I said quietly. I think I lost 7 years of my life to a man who saw me as a meal ticket instead of a wife. I think I lost time I'll never get back, trust I'll never fully have again. But what I didn't lose was my self-respect, Derek, and that's more than you can say. He flinched as if I'd struck him. Amanda was right. You are cold. No wonder I looked elsewhere. Amanda, I repeated slowly, is about to learn what it's like to date a man who owns nothing and blames everyone else for his failures. I'd almost feel sorry for her if she wasn't complicit in destroying my marriage. Our marriage was already dead, Derek snapped. I just had the courage to admit it. No, you had the cowardice to cheat instead of having an honest conversation. There's a difference. Michael came down the stairs with another suitcase. Derek, seriously, let's go. You're just making this worse. But Derek was on a roll now. Months or maybe years of resentment pouring out. You know what really kills me? That mom was right about you. She said from the beginning that you were beneath our family, that you'd never fit in. I defended you. I told her you were smart and ambitious and worth it. And you know what? She was right. You were never really one of us. Thank God for that, I said, standing up from the table. Because being one of you apparently means orchestrating public humiliations and enabling infidelity and raising children who think betrayal is acceptable as long as you can justify it. I'd rather be beneath your family than be part of it. Derek's face went red. You're a spiteful, vindictive— Derek! Michael's voice was sharp. Enough. You cheated on her. She's letting you take your stuff and walk away. Most women would make this much harder. Show some gratitude and shut up. The rebuke from his younger brother seemed to deflate Derek. His shoulders sagged, and when he spoke again, his voice was smaller. I never meant for it to happen like this. How did you mean for it to happen? I asked, genuinely curious. I thought, Mom said you'd be reasonable, that we could split things fairly and both move on. I thought you'd understand that we'd just grown apart, that these things happen. Fairly, I repeated. Derek, what exactly did you think we'd split fairly? The house I bought? The cars I leased? The furniture I paid for? What did you bring to this marriage besides resentment and infidelity? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. You know what I think? I continued. I think you and Patricia planned this for months. I think she encouraged your relationship with Amanda, probably even facilitated it. I think she convinced you that you deserved better, that you were entitled to half of what I built, that I'd just roll over and give it to you. And I think you believed her, because it was easier than admitting you were living a life you didn't earn. That's not— Derek started but couldn't finish. Your mother told me it was just a baby when my friend miscarried, I said, a memory surfacing that I'd buried years ago. She told me that some women just weren't meant to be mothers when I mentioned wanting to wait a few years before trying for kids. She told me I was too focused on my career, too ambitious, too unwilling to put family first. And you know what? I let her say those things because I thought if I just worked hard enough, proved myself enough, she'd eventually accept me. Jen, but she never would have, would she? Because I committed the unforgivable sin of being more successful than her son, of making Patricia Hayes look like she'd raised a man who couldn't support himself. And rather than defending me, rather than standing up to her, you let her poison our marriage from the inside out. Derek's eyes were wet now. Whether from anger or grief, I couldn't tell. I loved you. I did. But loving you was exhausting. You were always so strong, so capable. I felt like I was drowning next to you. Then you should have learned to swim, I said. Instead, you tried to pull me under with you. Michael cleared his throat. I've got Derek's stuff loaded. We should go. Derek picked up a suitcase he'd set down earlier. At the door, he turned back one last time. I'm sorry, Jennifer. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. So am I said. I'm sorry I wasted 7 years on someone who saw my success as a threat instead of something to celebrate. I'm sorry I didn't see who you really were sooner. And I'm sorry that you're going to look back on this someday and realize you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you. After they left, I walked through the house, checking what Derek had taken. His clothes from the closet, gone. His toiletries from the bathroom, cleared out. His Xbox and games from the entertainment center, removed. He'd left behind some books I'd bought him over the years, a watch I'd given him for our 5th anniversary, and various small items that had been gifts from me. In the bedroom, I stripped the sheets from the bed and threw them in the washing machine. I didn't want anything that held Derek's scent, his presence, his memory. Tomorrow, I'd buy new sheets, new pillows, maybe even a new mattress. This would become my room, my sanctuary, with no ghost of him lingering. My phone rang. Rebecca Stern. How did it go? He took his stuff, made some accusations, tried to justify his behavior, blamed me for everything. Pretty much what I expected. Good. His attorney called me this morning. Derek wants to finalize everything as quickly as possible. I think reality is setting in about his new financial situation. How quickly? We could have the separation finalized by January 15th if you're willing to move fast. The divorce will take longer, but the separation will legally protect your assets and establish that you're no longer responsible for anything he does financially. Do it. The sooner I'm legally separated from Derek, the better. After hanging up, I made myself lunch and sat at my kitchen table, eating in the silence of my empty house. Empty, but mine. Quiet, but peaceful. Lonely, but free. That afternoon, I drove to the practice. It was closed for the holidays, but I needed to be there to remind myself of what I'd built, what I'd accomplished completely on my own. I walked through the reception area with its comfortable chairs and soothing colors, through the treatment rooms with their state-of-the-art equipment, to my private office with its framed diplomas and awards. Dr. Jennifer Hayes, DDS, owner and operator of Hayes Dental Care, employer of 6 people, provider of excellent dental care to over 800 patients, successful businesswoman, soon-to-be divorcee, and somehow, despite everything, still standing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, assuming it was Patricia or one of Derek's flying monkeys with another guilt trip, but curiosity won. Dr. Hayes, this is Amanda Whitmore. I wanted you to know that I broke things off with Derek this morning. My mother helped me see that what we did was wrong. I know an apology can't fix what happened, but I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely sorry for my part in hurting you. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. I stared at that message for a long time. Amanda Whitmore had ended things with Derek, the woman he'd betrayed me for, the woman he'd introduced to his family, the woman who was supposed to be his fresh start, had dumped him less than a week after our marriage imploded. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, to revel in Derek's loss, but mostly I just felt tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the betrayal, tired of caring what happened to any of them. I didn't respond to Amanda's text. There was nothing to say. No forgiveness to offer yet, maybe not ever. She'd made her choices, and now she'd have to live with them, just like Derek, just like Patricia, just like everyone who'd participated in that Christmas disaster. Instead, I called Karen from the practice. About that New Year's Eve girls' night you mentioned, count me in. Really? That's great. We're thinking dinner at that new Italian place downtown. Then maybe some dancing. Nothing too crazy, just fun. Fun sounds perfect. That evening, I decorated my house for New Year's, not Christmas. Those decorations had come down the day after Derek collected his things, but New Year's, silver and gold streamers, a countdown clock I'd found at the party store, champagne chilling in the refrigerator. I was going to celebrate the end of this year and the beginning of the next properly, with people who actually valued me. My phone rang at 9 o'clock. Susan, Derek's aunt. Jennifer, I wanted to give you a heads up. Patricia is planning something for New Year's Eve, some kind of family gathering where she's going to set the record straight about your divorce. She's invited everyone, including some of your former mutual friends. Let her, I said. She can tell whatever story she wants. The truth has a way of coming out eventually. That's very mature of you. For what it's worth, several family members are refusing to attend. We know what really happened, and we're not interested in Patricia's version of events. Thank you, Susan. That means more than you know. After we hung up, I thought about Patricia's gathering, her desperate attempt to control the narrative. She'd always been concerned with appearances, with how things looked to others. The idea that her son was at fault, that he'd cheated and lost everything because of his own poor choices, must be eating her alive. But that was Patricia's problem, not mine. I had my own life to rebuild, my own future to plan. And for the first time in days, possibly years, I felt excited about that future instead of afraid. The next few days passed quietly. I worked at the practice, caught up on administrative tasks I'd been putting off, reorganized my house to remove any remaining traces of Derek. I bought new sheets in a soft sage green. Derek had always insisted on white, and rearranged the bedroom furniture to make it feel different. Mine. On New Year's Eve, I got ready for the girls' night with more care than I'd taken with my appearance in months. I wore a black dress I'd bought years ago but never worn because Derek said it was too low cut, paired it with heels that made me feel powerful, and actually put on makeup for the first time since Christmas. Karen picked me up at 7. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Dr. Hayes, you look amazing. It's Jennifer tonight, and thank you. I feel amazing. The Italian restaurant was perfect, warm, and welcoming, with incredible food and wine. The other women from the practice, Melissa the receptionist, Sarah the other hygienist, and April our office manager, were already there, and they greeted me with hugs and genuine affection. We ate pasta and drank wine and laughed about ridiculous patients and office gossip. No one mentioned Derek. No one asked about the divorce or offered platitudes about how I'd find someone better. They just treated me like a friend, like a person, like someone whose company they enjoyed beyond her role as their boss. After dinner, we went to a club downtown. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been dancing, certainly not since marrying Derek, who had always claimed he hated clubs. The music was loud, the lights were dim, and for a few hours, I forgot about betrayal and property division and family drama. I just danced, surrounded by women who had my back, feeling free in a way I hadn't felt in years. At midnight, we counted down together, screaming the numbers over the music, and when the clock struck 12, we toasted with champagne that the bartender had prepared for everyone. To new beginnings, Karen said, raising her glass. To leaving toxic people in the past, Melissa added. To strong women who don't need men to be happy, Sarah chimed in. To Dr. Hayes, April said, looking at me with genuine warmth, the strongest woman we know. We clinked glasses, and I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were happy tears this time, grateful tears. I'd lost a husband, a marriage, a family I'd tried so hard to belong to, but I'd gained something too. Clarity, self-respect, and the knowledge that I could survive anything life threw at me. My phone buzzed at 12:30, a text from an unknown number that I almost deleted without reading, but something made me open it. Happy New Year, Jennifer. I hope this year brings you everything you deserve. You were always too good for me. I see that now. I'm sorry for everything. Derek. I showed the message to Karen, who was standing next to me at the bar. She rolled her eyes. Don't you dare respond to that. I wasn't planning to, I assured her. He made his choices. Now he gets to live with them. Good, because that's just him trying to worm his way back in when he realizes what he lost. She was right. Derek wasn't sorry. He was suffering the consequences of his actions and looking for an escape route. But there was no escape, no going back, no redemption arc where we reconciled and lived happily ever after. That night, when Karen dropped me off at my house, I stood in my driveway for a moment, looking at my home, my sanctuary, my achievement. The porch light glowed warmly, welcoming me back to a space that was entirely mine. Inside, I kicked off my heels and poured one final glass of champagne. I raised it to my reflection in the darkened window. Happy New Year, Jennifer, I said to myself. This is going to be your year. And somehow, despite everything that had happened, despite the pain and betrayal and loss, I believed it. January arrived cold and clear, bringing with it the finalization of my separation from Derek. On January 15th, exactly 3 weeks after that catastrophic Christmas dinner, I sat in Rebecca Stern's office and signed the papers that legally ended my marriage. It's done, Rebecca said, sliding the documents into a folder. You're officially separated. The divorce will take a few more months to finalize, but legally, you're protected. Anything Derek does from this point forward is his responsibility, not yours. I stared at my signature on the page, Jennifer Hayes in black ink, and felt a strange mixture of relief and grief. 7 years of marriage reduced to a stack of legal documents that stated in cold legal language that Derek and I were no longer partners in any meaningful sense. How is he doing? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Do you really want to know? I'm curious, not because I care exactly, but because I want to understand what happens to people who make the choices he made. According to Diane Brennan, he's struggling. He's living in a one-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town because it's what he can afford on his salary. Amanda Whitmore dumped him, as you know, and apparently Patricia is furious with him for not fighting harder for your assets. She's been telling everyone who'll listen that he's weak and that he let you manipulate him. The irony was almost too perfect. Derek had lost everything he thought mattered, his comfortable lifestyle, his new girlfriend, even his mother's approval, because he'd followed Patricia's plan. She'd orchestrated his betrayal, encouraged his affair, promised him everything would work out, and now that it hadn't, she was blaming him. What about the criminal charges for the break-in at my practice? Dropped, as agreed. He's lucky you were willing to negotiate. That could have been a felony on his record. After leaving Rebecca's office, I drove to the practice. It was my first day back after the holidays, and I needed to refocus on work, on the business I'd built, on the life I was reconstructing. The staff greeted me warmly, and within an hour, I was seeing patients, focused on teeth and treatment plans and the comforting routine of my profession. During lunch, Sharon knocked on my office door. Dr. Hayes, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Patricia Hayes. My stomach dropped. Derek's mother? That's what she said. Should I send her away? Part of me wanted to say yes, to refuse to engage with the woman who'd orchestrated my public humiliation. But another part, the part that had grown stronger over the past 3 weeks, was curious. What could Patricia possibly want? Show her in. But Sharon, stay within earshot. If I need you, I'll call. Understood. Patricia entered my office looking like she always did. Perfectly coiffed, designer clothes, an expression of superiority that seemed permanently etched on her face. But there was something different too. A tightness around her eyes, a tension in her shoulders. Jennifer, she said, not sitting down despite my gesture toward the chair across from my desk. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Patricia. Don't be childish. This situation has gotten out of hand, and it's time we resolved it like adults. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. What situation, exactly? This vindictive crusade you're on against my son. You've taken everything from him, turned the family against him, and now you're just sitting here in your little dental office, acting like you're the victim. I am the victim, Patricia. Your son cheated on me with a coworker, and you helped him humiliate me in front of your entire family. Those are facts, not opinions. Derek made a mistake, she said, waving her hand dismissively. Men do that. It doesn't mean you get to destroy his life over it. I didn't destroy his life. He did that himself when he chose to have an affair instead of working on our marriage. Patricia's face reddened. You were never right for him. I told him that from the beginning. You were too ambitious, too focused on your career. A wife should support her husband, not make him feel inadequate. A wife should be a partner, I corrected. And Derek felt inadequate because you spent 7 years telling him he was inadequate. Every family dinner, every phone call, every conversation where you reminded him that he was living in my house, driving my cars, benefiting from my success. You poisoned our marriage from the inside, Patricia, and you did it deliberately. I was trying to motivate him to be better. No, you were trying to control him. And when he finally did what you wanted, when he found a woman from a better family and tried to end our marriage, it still wasn't good enough for you, because now Derek looks like the bad guy, and that reflects poorly on you. Patricia gripped her purse tighter, her knuckles white. I came here to make a deal with you. What kind of deal? Derek is willing to reconcile. If you take him back, agree to couples counseling, give the marriage another chance, I'll try to be more supportive, less critical. I'll accept that you're part of the family. I stared at her, genuinely shocked. You think I'd take him back? After everything? Marriages go through rough patches. With work, you could rebuild what you had. Patricia, we never had anything real. What we had was me working myself to exhaustion while Derek coasted on my success and resented me for it. What we had was you undermining me at every turn while I tried desperately to win your approval. I don't want that life back. So you're just going to throw away 7 years? Derek threw it away when he brought Amanda Whitmore to your house. I'm just cleaning up the mess he left behind. Patricia's composure cracked completely. You selfish, ungrateful bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Derek is depressed, living in some hovel, barely able to afford food. The extended family is split, half of them blaming me for what happened. You've destroyed everything. I've destroyed nothing. I simply refuse to be destroyed by you and Derek. There's a difference. He loved you, Patricia shouted. Despite everything, despite your coldness and your obsession with work, he loved you. If that's what Derek's love looks like, I said quietly, then I'm better off without it. Patricia stood there, breathing heavily, her carefully maintained facade completely shattered. When she spoke again, her voice was venomous. You'll regret this. When you're 40 and alone, when your looks fade and your practice isn't enough to keep you warm at night, you'll realize what you gave up. And it'll be too late. Maybe, I agreed, but I'd rather be alone and respected than partnered and betrayed. Now, unless you have actual business to discuss regarding the divorce, I need to ask you to leave. I have patients waiting. Patricia's eyes narrowed. This isn't over, Jennifer. Yes, it is. The separation is finalized. Derek and I will never reconcile, and you and I have no reason to see each other again. It's very much over. She left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. After she was gone, Sharon appeared in the doorway. Are you okay? I am, I said, realizing it was true. I really am. That evening, I received a call from Susan, Derek's aunt. Jennifer, I heard Patricia visited you at your practice today. I wanted to make sure you're all right. How did you hear about that? Patricia called me immediately after, ranting about how ungrateful and vindictive you are, how you refuse to even consider reconciliation. I wanted to hear your side. I explained what had happened, Patricia's offer, her threats, her complete inability to take any responsibility for the role she played in destroying my marriage. That woman, Susan said with a sigh. She's been calling family members for weeks, trying to rally support for Derek, trying to paint you as the villain. But Jennifer, you should know, it's not working. Most of the family sees through her. We know what really happened. That's kind of you to say. It's not kindness, it's truth. And there's something else you should know. Derek tried to reconcile with Amanda Whitmore, begged her to take him back. She refused. Apparently, her mother made it very clear that Amanda was not to have any contact with a married man, separated or not. Good for Barbara Whitmore. So now Derek is alone, broke, and starting to realize what he threw away. Patricia is furious because her plan backfired spectacularly, and you're moving on with your life successful and free. That's the real story, Jennifer. And that's the story the family is telling. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, in my house, on my couch, and felt the weight of the past month finally lift from my shoulders. I'd been betrayed by my husband, humiliated by my mother-in-law, forced to fight for what was rightfully mine. But I'd won. Not because I'd been vindictive or cruel, but because I'd simply told the truth and stood firm in what I knew was right. My phone buzzed with a text from Karen. How was your first full day back? Surviving? More than surviving? I typed back. Thriving. The next few weeks brought a new rhythm to my life. Work during the day, evenings spent redecorating the house, weekends with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I joined a book club, started taking a pottery class, and even went on a date with a man Sharon's husband knew from his gym. The date wasn't spectacular, we had little in common, but it proved I could do it. Could put myself out there again without Derek's shadow hanging over me. In late February, I received notice that the divorce would be finalized in April. 6 months total from Christmas dinner to legal freedom. Remarkably fast, Rebecca explained, because Derek hadn't contested anything, hadn't tried to drag out the proceedings, had simply signed whatever she put in front of him. He knows he has no case, Rebecca said, and honestly, I think he's just exhausted. Fighting you requires resources he doesn't have, financially or emotionally. Has he tried to contact you about changing the terms? Twice. Once to ask if you'd consider giving him some of the furniture from the house, since he's living in an unfurnished apartment. I told him no, per your instructions. The second time to ask if you'd be willing to delay the divorce, give him more time to get on his feet before the final decree. Again, I told him no. Good, I want this finished. In March, I hosted my first dinner party since the separation. I invited Sharon, Karen, Melissa, April, and Susan, Derek's aunt, who had become a genuine friend through this ordeal. We ate pasta and drank wine, and laughed about everything and nothing. And at one point, Susan raised her glass. To Jennifer, she said, who taught us all that the strongest response to betrayal isn't revenge, it's refusing to be destroyed by it. Everyone clinked glasses, and I felt tears prick my eyes again. Those happy, grateful tears that seemed to come more easily now. Thank you, I said. All of you. I couldn't have gotten through this without your support. You'd have gotten through it, Karen said firmly, but we're glad we could make it easier. Later that evening, after everyone had left and I was cleaning up, my phone rang. An unknown number, but I was in a good mood, feeling generous, so I answered. Jennifer? Derek's voice, hesitant and small. Please don't hang up. I just need to talk to you for 5 minutes. What do you want, Derek? I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I want you back or because I'm trying to change the divorce terms, just because you deserve to hear it. I've heard it before. I know, but I don't think I really meant it before. I was just sorry I got caught. Sorry I lost my comfortable life. Now I'm actually sorry for what I did to you, to us, to 7 years of marriage. I sat down on my couch, surprised by the apparent sincerity in his voice. What changed? Reality, he said with a bitter laugh. Living in a crappy apartment, eating ramen because I can't afford much else, watching my coworkers whisper about me because the affair became office gossip, realizing that mom used me as much as she claimed you did, except she used me for her ego and you actually cared about me. Derek, I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted. I know it's too late. I know I destroyed whatever we had. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I gave up. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away because I was weak and stupid and too concerned with what my mother thought. Silence stretched between us. Part of me wanted to tell him it was okay, to offer forgiveness and absolution. But the stronger part, the part that had grown over these past months, knew better. I appreciate you saying that, Derek, genuinely, but it doesn't change anything. I know, I'm not asking it to. I needed to say it, to own what I did, to stop blaming you or circumstances or anything else. I cheated. I betrayed your trust. I humiliated you publicly. That was all me, and I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that. I hope you learn from this, Derek. I hope you become a better man for your next relationship, but that relationship won't be with me. I understand. He paused. One more thing. Mom is planning to contest something in the divorce. I don't know what exactly, but she's been meeting with lawyers, trying to find some way to get you to pay me something. I wanted to warn you. Why? Why warn me if Patricia's your mother? Because you're right about her. She is toxic, and she did poison our marriage. I'm done letting her control my life. I've started seeing a therapist, actually working on myself for the first time ever, and part of that is recognizing that what she's planning is wrong. After we hung up, I immediately called Rebecca and relayed what Derek had told me. She was quiet for a moment, then said, Patricia Hayes has no standing to contest anything in your divorce, but let me look into this. If she's hired lawyers, I want to know what they're planning. 2 days later, Rebecca called back, her voice tight with anger. You're not going to believe this. Patricia hired an attorney to file a claim against you on Derek's behalf, arguing that he's entitled to spousal support based on lifestyle expectations established during the marriage. Can she do that? She can try. Derek would have to cooperate. But the attorney claims Patricia has power of attorney for Derek due to his emotional instability following the separation. It's complete bullshit, and it'll get thrown out, but it means court appearances and more legal fees for you. Let her try, I said, surprising myself with my calm. If Patricia wants to drag this into court, I'll be happy to testify about exactly how she orchestrated the affair, facilitated the betrayal, and contributed to the destruction of my marriage. Let's see how that plays in front of a judge. Rebecca chuckled darkly. I was hoping you'd say that, because honestly, Jennifer, I think it's time we stopped playing defense and went on offense. Patricia Hayes has defamed you, interfered with your marriage, and is now attempting to fraudulently claim legal authority over her adult son. I think we should file a countersuit. For what? Intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation. We could even argue that her interference in your marriage contributed to its failure and seek damages. It probably won't go anywhere, but it'll send a message. You're not someone to be messed with. I thought about it. Months ago, before Christmas, I'd have said no. I'd have wanted to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to not make waves, but I wasn't that person anymore. Do it, I said. File the countersuit. It's time Patricia learned that actions have consequences. The court date arrived on a surprisingly warm day in late April. 6 months after that catastrophic Christmas dinner, I found myself sitting in a courtroom next to Rebecca Stern, facing Patricia Hayes, her attorney, and Derek, who looked profoundly uncomfortable to be there. Judge Margaret Chen, a woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense, reviewed the paperwork before her. Patricia's claim for spousal support on Derek's behalf and my countersuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress and defamation. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Judge Chen said, looking over her reading glasses at Patricia's attorney. Mrs. Hayes, you're claiming power of attorney over your 36-year-old son to pursue spousal support from his estranged wife, despite the fact that all marital assets are documented as separate property belonging solely to Dr. Jennifer Hayes. Patricia's attorney, a nervous young man who clearly knew his case was weak, nodded. Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Derek Hayes has been emotionally devastated by the separation and is unable to adequately represent his own interests. His mother is acting on his behalf to ensure he receives fair compensation for 7 years of supporting his wife's career. Rebecca stood. Your Honor, if I may, Derek Hayes has no documented power of attorney. His mother cannot legally represent his interests without his explicit consent, which he has not provided. Furthermore, the claim that he supported his wife's career is demonstrably false. Dr. Hayes has provided extensive documentation showing that she funded the household entirely through her separate property and business income. Judge Chen looked at Derek directly. Mr. Hayes, did you grant your mother power of attorney? Derek shifted uncomfortably. No, Your Honor. Do you wish for your mother to represent you in this matter? A long pause. Patricia leaned forward, her expression sharp, clearly trying to communicate something to her son through sheer force of will. But Derek, perhaps for the first time in his life, didn't comply. No, Your Honor, I don't. The courtroom went silent. Patricia's face turned red, then white. Her attorney looked confused, shuffling papers as if the answer might be hidden somewhere in his file. Mr. Hayes, Judge Chen continued, are you seeking spousal support from Dr. Hayes? No, Your Honor, I'm not. Then this claim is dismissed. Mrs. Patricia Hayes, you have wasted this court's time with a frivolous filing. Mr. Daniels, she addressed Patricia's attorney, I suggest you screen your clients more carefully in the future. Patricia stood abruptly. Your Honor, my son doesn't understand what he's giving up. He's not thinking clearly. That woman, she pointed at me, has manipulated him, turned him against his own family. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Chen's voice was ice. Sit down. Now. Patricia sat, but her face was twisted with rage. Now, the judge continued. Let's address Dr. Hayes' countersuit. Dr. Hayes, you're claiming that Mrs. Patricia Hayes deliberately interfered in your marriage, defamed your character, and caused you emotional distress. Can you provide evidence of this? Rebecca stood again. Your Honor, we have multiple witnesses who will testify that Mrs. Hayes orchestrated a public humiliation of Dr. Hayes on December 25th of last year. She invited Dr. Hayes to what was presented as a family holiday gathering, but was actually a staged event where Mr. Derek Hayes introduced his mistress to Dr. Hayes in front of the entire family. Is this true, Mr. Hayes? Judge Chen asked Derek. Yes, Your Honor, my mother planned the dinner specifically to end my marriage in front of everyone. She said it would be cleaner that way, that Jennifer would be too embarrassed to fight back. Patricia made a sound like a wounded animal. Judge Chen silenced her with a look. Your Honor, Rebecca continued, we also have testimony from several family members that Mrs. Hayes has conducted a campaign of defamation against Dr. Hayes, telling relatives and mutual acquaintances that Dr. Hayes was vindictive, cruel, and responsible for her son's financial difficulties. In reality, Mr. Hayes owned no marital assets because he deliberately kept his name off all major purchases and property deeds. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Chen addressed Patricia directly. Did you organize this Christmas dinner as described? Patricia's attorney whispered urgently to her, but she ignored him. My son deserved better than her. She was never good enough for our family. I was trying to help him see that, to give him the courage to leave a marriage that was making him miserable. By facilitating an affair and orchestrating public humiliation, by showing him he had options, by introducing him to a woman from a proper family with proper values. Mrs. Hayes, Judge Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of decades on the bench. In my 30 years as a judge, I've seen many ugly divorces. I've seen betrayal, cruelty, and spite of every imaginable variety. But rarely have I seen a parent actively work to destroy their child's marriage so publicly and with such calculated malice. Patricia opened her mouth to argue, but Judge Chen held up her hand. You orchestrated an affair. You planned a public humiliation. You then attempted to fraudulently represent your adult son in legal proceedings he explicitly did not want. And throughout all of this, you've conducted a defamation campaign against a woman whose only crime was being more successful than your son. Judge Chen looked at her notes, then back at Patricia. I'm ruling in favor of Dr. Hayes on all counts. Mrs. Patricia Hayes, you are hereby ordered to pay Dr. Jennifer Hayes the sum of $50,000 in damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress. You are also ordered to cease and desist all defamatory statements about Dr. Hayes, on penalty of additional fines and potential contempt charges. Finally, you are ordered to have no contact with Dr. Hayes going forward. Any communication necessary for finalizing the divorce between Dr. Hayes and your son will go through attorneys only. Patricia stood again, her voice shaking with rage. This is outrageous. You can't. I can. And I have. Sit down, Mrs. Hayes, or I'll hold you in contempt right now. Patricia sat, her hands trembling, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. Judge Chen turned to Derek and me. Mr. Hayes, Dr. Hayes, your divorce decree is hereby finalized. You are legally divorced as of today. Mr. Hayes, you retain ownership of your personal belongings as outlined in the separation agreement. Dr. Hayes, you retain all property and assets documented as your separate property. Neither party owes the other any ongoing financial support. Do you both understand and accept these terms? Yes, Your Honor, we said in unison. Then this matter is concluded. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that felt like the closing of a chapter, the end of a story that had started with betrayal and ended with justice. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca and I stood on the steps, the spring sun warm on our faces. $50,000, Rebecca said with satisfaction, plus legal fees. Patricia Hayes is going to regret ever messing with you. I don't care about the money, I said honestly. I care that she was held accountable, that for once in her life, Patricia faced consequences for her actions. Derek approached cautiously, Patricia and her attorney already disappearing toward the parking lot. Jennifer, can we talk? Just for a minute? Rebecca tensed beside me, but I nodded. It's okay. Derek looked older than he had 6 months ago. Thinner, tired, the cockiness that had always clung to him completely gone. Thank you, he said simply, for not going after me harder, for letting me walk away. I never wanted to destroy you, Derek. I just wanted to protect what was mine. I know, and I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that. He glanced back toward where Patricia had disappeared. I'm moving to Boston. Got a job offer there, better pay, fresh start. I'm going to rebuild my life, away from Mom, away from all of this. Good for you. I genuinely hope hope you find happiness. I hope you do too. You deserve it. He hesitated, then added, you always deserved better than what I gave you, better than what my family gave you. After he left, Rebecca turned to me with a smile. How does it feel to be officially divorced? Honestly, it feels like freedom. That evening, I hosted a celebration dinner at my house. Susan came, along with several other family members who had supported me throughout the divorce. Karen, Sharon, Melissa, and April from the practice were there. Even Barbara Whitmore came, bringing a homemade lasagna and a heartfelt apology for her daughter's role in everything. To Jennifer, Susan said, raising her glass as we gathered around my dining room table, who showed us all that the best revenge isn't destroying someone else, it's building a life so good they realize what they lost. To justice, Karen added, and to Patricia Hayes finally getting what she deserved. To new beginnings, Barbara Whitmore said quietly, and to the strength it takes to walk away from toxicity. We clinked glasses, and I looked around my table, my house, at the people who had supported me through the darkest period of my life. This wasn't the family I'd married into, but it was the family I'd chosen, and that made all the difference. My phone buzzed with a text. Michael, Derek's brother. I heard about court today. Good for you, Jennifer. Seriously, Mom needed to hear some hard truths, and I'm glad you were the one to deliver them. Sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner. I typed back, thank you. That means a lot. Another text, this one from Amanda Whitmore. I heard about the court ruling. I'm glad you got justice. I'm sorry for everything, truly. I considered not responding, but something in me had softened over the past months. Enough to type, I forgive you. We all make mistakes. Learn from yours. The party continued late into the evening, laughter and conversation filling my house with warmth and life. At one point, I stepped out onto my back porch, looking at the garden I'd planted in March, already showing signs of spring growth, tulips and daffodils pushing through the soil, reaching toward the sun, just like me. My phone rang one last time, an unknown number, but somehow I knew who it would be before I answered. Jennifer. Patricia's voice, stripped of its usual imperious tone, sounding old and defeated. I'm calling to tell you that I'm writing the check for $50,000. My attorney will deliver it tomorrow. Thank you. I want you to know, I don't think I was wrong. I still believe you were never right for Derek, that you came from nothing and were lucky to marry into our family. But I understand now that I went too far. Patricia, you orchestrated your son's affair and my public humiliation. That's not going too far. That's cruelty, pure and simple. Silence. Then, did I really destroy his marriage? Or was it already broken? It was broken, I admitted, but not because of what you think. It was broken because Derek never learned to stand up to you, to make his own choices, to be his own man. You raised a son who was more concerned with your approval than with being a good husband. That's on you. He was supposed to be better than this, better than his father, who was weak and ordinary. I pushed him because I wanted him to achieve more, to be more. You pushed him into my arms, then pushed him away again when his life with me made you uncomfortable. Derek never had a chance to figure out who he was or what he wanted because you were always telling him. And now he's 36, divorced, living in another state, trying to build a life away from your influence. Is that what you wanted? Another long silence. No, I wanted him to be happy. Then you should have let him choose his own happiness instead of choosing it for him. I suppose you're right. Patricia's voice cracked. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not for everything. I still think you were wrong for my son, but for how I handled it. You didn't deserve that Christmas dinner. No one did. It wasn't the apology I would have wanted 6 months ago. It wasn't even a full apology now, but it was something. An acknowledgement that Patricia's actions had consequences, that her cruelty had costs. Goodbye, Patricia. I hope you learn from this. I hope you find peace with your choices. Goodbye, Jennifer. I hung up and stood there for a moment, letting the cool evening air wash over me. Patricia Hayes had been held accountable. Derek was rebuilding his life away from his toxic family, and I was free, truly free, for the first time in 7 years. Inside, laughter erupted from my dining room. Someone was telling a story, probably Karen, with another ridiculous tale about a difficult patient. My friends, my chosen family, waiting for me to rejoin the celebration. I looked at my house one more time, at the home I'd built with my own money, my own work, my own determination. The house that Derek had never owned, that Patricia had tried to make me feel small in, that now stood as proof of what I could accomplish entirely on my own. The story that had started with betrayal, that had moved through anger and grief and justice, ended here. Not with revenge or destruction or bitterness, but with peace, with growth, with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd stood up for myself when it mattered most. At Christmas, my mother-in-law had introduced a new woman to my husband in front of everyone, expecting me to crumble. I'd smiled sweetly and revealed the truth. The house was in my name, not his. The room had gone silent then, and in that silence, I'd found my voice. 6 months later, I had my house, my practice, my freedom, and my dignity. Derek had his fresh start in Boston and, hopefully, the chance to become his own person. Patricia had $50,000 less and a court order to stay away from me. And Amanda Whitmore had learned a hard lesson about the cost of betrayal. The scales of justice had balanced after all. I walked back inside to my friends, to my celebration, to my life. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in my house as a divorced woman, free and clear. I'd go to work at the practice I'd built. I'd make plans for the summer, maybe that trip to Italy I'd always wanted to take. I'd continue building the life I deserved, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. The nightmare that started at Christmas had ended in April, with a judge's gavel and a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. And now, finally, I could move forward, not as Derek's wife, not as Patricia's disappointing daughter-in-law, but as Jennifer Hayes, doctor of dental surgery, business owner, survivor, and above all, free woman. What started with betrayal ended with justice. What began with humiliation humiliation concluded with dignity, and what seemed like an ending turned out to be the beginning of something better than I'd ever imagined possible. Have you ever faced a moment where someone tried to break you, only for you to discover you were stronger than anyone, including yourself? Realized? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes our darkest moments lead us to our brightest futures. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for being here and for supporting this journey from betrayal to freedom.